Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Apes on Tape podcast. We're here with Dan Pantenburg, right? Did I get that right?
Yep, Pantenburg.
From the Autonomics, and we're going to talk about Comedown Machine because that became available for streaming this week. That's Strokes' new album, which is actually out on Tuesday. It's the band's fifth studio album. Pretty quick follow-up to the 2011 release, Angles, and also fulfills the last contract obligation with RCA, which I think is interesting to know. If you look at the album cover, which is the biggest thing on there, is RCA. Like I said, joined by Dan on here, and a little background. We actually played with Autonomics, that's his band, like a year and a half ago in Portland. And Dan, I've already told you this, and I think I've told a number of people, that was probably the most difficult show of my life to to play afterwards. But we're fucking on tables, ripping it with solos, crowd is ignited. And I bring that up because, one, you should check out the Autonomics, great. But also, I've heard a lot of Strokes Autonomics comparisons, and I think if you watch early Is This It era videos, you could definitely get that vibe. But beyond the band comparison, I think...
That's awesome to hear, too.
Yeah, I think I was watching...
By the way, I think you guys held it up pretty well. Like, I mean, memories of that show are a little hazy. I think we had all turned 21 at that point. I think, you shouldn't sell yourself short.
All right, we tried. But anyways, past the the band comparisons, I think Strokes are pretty formative band to yourself. No,
most definitely. I think they're probably like one of the most influential rock bands of the last 15 years. Not just for like us, but for a lot of people. Like I feel like there was a lot of Strokes-esque music that came out as a result of Is This It. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think I should preface that too, that Strokes are probably one of my, top 3 most formative bands. And my sister, she was living in New York at the time when Is This It took over the world. And I remember, I just realized this today, she actually asked for that for Christmas, the album. 12-year-old me, not knowing what it was, bought it for, she opened it, I fell in love with it at Christmas. And I actually, when she went back to New York, I kept the CD and hid it and pretended I didn't know. And then she was like, well, send it back to me. And I just sent the album like packaging but not the disc, little bastard. But totally fell in love with that album.
It's definitely, it's a really, really cool sound. I mean, 2001, you think about kind of like the era, you had a lot of boy bands like NSYNC had sold like multi-platinum albums and stuff, and then out comes this crazy mix of like garage rock and post-punk, and it's like Lou Reed and like twin guitar, cool leads and shit, but it's not like redundant. Like every song on the album sounds the same, but each song is like standalone, fucking badass.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was so cohesive too. Like what they were drawing from, it was a great packaged album. Complete as one thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the whole story. They're all kind of like Julian Casablancas is a son of a model and like some liquidator or something like that. I'm not sure the whole story, but I mean they're all kind of like that's what I feel like they got the most flack from right off the bat, was the fact that they're all kind of like set up,
Yeah, like Vampire Weekend critique kind of.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Totally. Kind of like they all came from pretty affluent families and stuff. Like none of them really ever had to work a job. I mean, Julian was like 22 when that record came out.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely that's kind of crazy to think about too, like just the age of those guys when making a record, because like a lot of people would call that one of the best rock records of the last 15, 20 years.
Absolutely, and I was just reading the Rolling Stone on the 500 greatest rock albums ever had it like 199.
Fuck, all right, yeah, dude, that's what's up.
Yeah, so I think it's important to establish that. I mean, that's important. This whole story of the Strokes, and I think we can dive into the whole background, the journey in between, what it means for the Strokes and stuff. But I guess maybe just want to talk a little what you thought about this album, Comedown Machine. I know you've been listening to
Comedown Machine.
Yeah, talking about it.
I could
thoughts on it.
And again, like Strokes, huge influence on me. I could talk about the Strokes for a really long time.
Ditto.
I've given Comedown Machine probably like 3 or 4 solid listens. And like first impression, I wasn't like I didn't know how I felt about it. It kind of like struck me like Angles did, but actually I think now I like it more than I liked Angles. Like compared to this one, Angles felt like a little more like watered down, a little kind of like not super consistent and kind of scattered. This one definitely feels like it's got more like, I don't know, they seemed like more collected in the songwriting, you know, like, because
Yeah,
like, the
absolutely.
whole story with Angles was that, yeah, they all kind of like wrote it in 5 different places and had Julian just come and sing on the music, and this whole operation kind of make everybody happy sort of thing. Whereas this one definitely feels like had a lot more collaborative efforts. I mean, the single kind of threw me off when I first heard it, like the whole like "Aha, Take on Me" kind of thing was just like, you know, right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good. I haven't heard that yet, but that's a good point. Yeah, One Way Trigger.
Well, like,
that
I
would be
mean,
the-
yeah, One Way Trigger. Yeah. Like, you know, and it just kind of like, it really threw me off for a second. I was like, oh god damn it, like weird '80s like synthy, like, I mean, because I'll listen to the Julian Casablanca solo record. I think it's good, but I wish it was like a little more organic. You know, I'm
Yeah,
like, that's just
yeah.
me. Like, I'm a rocker. You know, I like big guitars and, you know, like guttery or like, yeah, just guttural, like really distorted vocals and stuff like that. So that's kind of like, that's my bag. But like, I can definitely, I mean, like back to them being like 22 when they were like working on that record, like, is this it? And now, more than a decade later, kind of trying to maybe create something different, you know, like not really being super stoked on being that rock band anymore, because they made Is This It, and then they made Room on Fire, which is essentially like a perfect sequel to Is This It, you know, it's like same sound, same songs,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
definitely.
still like more developed. And then you had First Impressions of Earth, which is like, I thought it was a pretty cool evolution, you know. You had a lot more like a lot more technical guitar work and songwriting, which is a lot more like, it's almost like kind of like a metal album a little bit, I felt like, but still with, you know, that kind of Strokesy influence. And that was like what, like 2006?
I think so. I'm trying to figure out the years on that. Maybe, yeah, I think it was still 2006 on that. I'll check it out. real quick,
2006. So I mean, and then like hiatus, like huge breakup, you know, or whatever. Like nobody thought the Strokes were gonna come back or do everything. But I mean, I think like you mentioned before, like this is their last record with RCA. I don't know the whole contractual obligations involved. Like, were they still under RCA when they kind of went on hiatus for a second?
That's what I was just thinking, and I don't have that right now, but I got to imagine with the RCA first album that they wanted to sign him big, and that's probably why they got such a, you know, good distribution deal in the beginning. I don't know that 100%,
Right.
but that would seem like if you're going to get that unproven band, that might be a long-term thing they signed.
See, that would make sense. And like, I mean, back to the album cover, I did think that was kind of odd, like just RCA, just bam, right there. Like, do you think that was like kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of?
Well,
like,
yeah, when I just read that today, that was their last one, it seems like it was almost a fitting jab after this whole circus from Is This It, that might be, you know, kind of for them, a little tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. No, that's actually the first time I thought about that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, do you think that like, because they're no longer going to be in RCA, do you think the Strokes will continue to make music, or do you think like any of the music was? Do you think that this was the record that they wanted to make, or do you think they just made it just to, you know, fulfill that obligation?
That's a good point too, because when I think one of the resounding things I've heard, and like you brought it up, was this was a lot more cohesive, and I think better than Angles. And I'm not, you know, not one to negative critique on this. I know how hard it is to bring an album to fruition and all that. But what really bummed me out on Angles was that it just felt like, you know, we talked about this, it felt like they weren't too excited to be doing it. I mean, Julian not even being there when the band recording vocals, I think that explains the whole thing in itself. It just felt like it bummed me out for how formative and awesome the Strokes were earlier on, to find out that they weren't even recording together. So I think that album was definitely, we're just making it. But it seems like, I think Nikolai, there was an interview last year, maybe even early this year, was talking about how he, without saying it too much, definitely let on that he was like, we understood that we, you know, kind of messed up, and that was not the way we want to record an album. And they were all getting back together very quickly just to make the album they wanted to have made in Angles. So I think that probably, that framed the way that I looked at this. But listening to it, it sounds a lot more like a band, you know?
It's cool. It definitely sounds thicker, which is nice.
Yeah,
like,
that's a good way to
even all
put
the synthy bits and stuff. Yeah. It sounds like Angles definitely sounded a little thin in some parts. Like, not that it didn't have some good moments. There's definitely a few tracks on Angles that I definitely like, are mixtape worthy, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
But Like this one, I definitely like. I haven't let it sink in and absorb, but there's definitely like right off the bat, there was some stuff about it that I really liked. Like the single kind of threw me off, but the actual track, '80s Comedown Machine, is exactly like the the punk rock garagey shit that I was looking for the whole time.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other cool guitar moments on that. Like I think my favorite lyrics from like probably not my favorite Strokes lyric, but one of my favorite Julian lyrics in a long time is fuck, I forget the track, but it's what kind of asshole drives a Lotus.
That's been playing in my brain. Yeah.
Yeah, like
that one stuck out to me too. I feel like he was having fun with it again, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've read this interview where Julian Casablancas was talking about his solo stuff, and like the other members of the band are like, hey, I bet Julian's really surprised that his solo stuff didn't do, better. Like I think that was like Nick Valencia or something like that. And then Julian's like being interviewed, and he's like, I don't really understand. Like everything was so positive about my solo experience, and I just feel like my time with the Strokes just had all this weird negativity around it, and like, I think he kind of definitely had a second where he was trying to distance himself, from the band, and because I hear he's got like a very controlling personality, like songwriting wise, and like in the studio and stuff.
And I had that written down to bring up too, because from what I've read, he wrote and pretty much all of Is This It? And I don't know the extent of how much he played on the album and stuff, but
right, yeah.
And I've heard that before, so it's really interesting to think about if he did that in fact in the beginning. Then what's his relationship? And I don't know. It's a tricky position. I don't think that's necessarily super ego bomb. I mean, obviously the world's better with having that with Is This It in it, but then it's like, what do you go? How do you approach that position in the band after the fact?
Right, and like say you're, Nick Valencia, he's an incredibly talented guitar player and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. And all those dudes' solo projects, I think, from Little Joy and Albert Hammond stuff, you listen to it, it's like they're very talented, but maybe some of the whole kind of thing.
Yeah, see, and that's kind of an interesting thing too, because like, I mean, there's a difference between writing a song and then arranging a song, and that might have been, the key part of Is This It? Is like not just, Julian sitting down and saying New York City Cops, and like having that written out, but then the actual kind of like how that all comes together and arranged. Like, I mean, I don't know how good he is at the drums. Like, was he the kind of the pioneer of that kind of 2/4 beat that became the signature,
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of Little Joy, that actually might be my favorite Strokes solo project.
Yeah, I think so too. If you look at all those, and it's good. I think it feels the best. Like,
yeah. No, that's a good way to put it too. It's just really warm. Yeah, I mean, like Nick, it's Fabrizio's girlfriend or something like that.
I think so. And then who's the other guy? I can't remember who it is. I can look that up, but. Yeah, I feel it definitely had a like you said, the Julian Gossip, his whole solo album felt, I don't know, kind of inorganic, but I feel like Little Joy felt great, on the flip side of that.
Yeah. So, well, like I guess Fabrizio had this whole weird like acid trip experience or something like that, and now he like looks at the drums like way different.
Yeah, because I think he was going for that almost fill in the blanks drum machine vibe at the beginning, and maybe that was just to complement this whole vision that Julian had, but I could see that changing things up.
Well, I like the drums on this new record a lot. I think they're pretty good. They're like all the parts are really well thought out, just musically, which is cool. Like I think, hold on, let me look at the track list real quick. The first track actually I thought was kind of cool, and there's a lot of weird like 3/4 kind of like 80s Police stuff. Or like the Cars or something like that, which is kind of how I felt about the last album. But that last track's cool, like the Call It Fate, Call It Karma.
Yeah, and I remember something you brought up earlier this week. We're saying that maybe they just don't want to be a rock band as much anymore after over a decade now of doing this. And I think maybe the worst thing that happened with Strokes is they put out Is This It first, and then what do you do after that? And if you're trying to clone that vibe for a decade, that's a tough position to be in. But I think
I think that's definitely a general dilemma of most artists.
Yeah, it's the evolution of it. But I think that it's cool to hear, like I said, having the Strokes pretty dear to my heart, see them still going in there as a band and trying new things and exploring new things. Like that last track, Call It Fate, Call It Karma, that's totally different bossa nova vibes than anything else they've done.
Yeah. It's minimal. It's kind of like, it's almost a little haunting.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this record definitely sounds like they had more fun making than Angles.
Yeah, I would agree.
Which is good. I mean, that's good to. I mean, that's kind of good to see coming from a band like the Strokes, like you were saying. Like, I mean, trying new stuff instead of just kind of like throwing in the towel and putting out whatever shit they can to fulfill an obligation.
Definitely.
Yeah. What's Oh, well, it's kind of how I feel about I don't know if you're a big Arctic Monkeys fan or anything like that. But,
yeah, and I've heard that a few people call that now, that Alex Turner seems like he was a big influence on the Strokes, which is funny because I think that originally Strokes would have been the garage rock beacon, but then Arctic Monkeys kind of stuck in there and evolved more, I think, through 2006 to through Angles or something.
Yeah. No, so they kind of filled in the gaps when the Strokes weren't
really
in the Strokes. Well, and it's like their first few albums, I was like, oh, this is super badass, and then their more recent stuff, I feel like it's kind of, I don't know, it's just like too croony for me,
Yeah, I could see that.
But again, it's that's probably just a band trying to, although they made their image being a rock band, they're getting older and they're trying to figure other stuff out.
Definitely. And I think maybe that's just the reality of it, too.
Yeah. Like, I mean, burn out or fade away. It's the inevitable kind of whatever.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, yeah, so Tuesday, that album... Oh, go for it. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go for it.
Oh, no, you're fine. What do you think the future of the Strokes is?
I've been thinking a lot about that. I think a lot of it now is kind of in this post-RCA contract discovery that I just had this afternoon, because that frees them up, and it's saying, if you don't have to make anything, does all of a sudden it change it that you want to make things? Or if you put out a single, or like Radiohead King of Limbs style, you can just toss it out tomorrow if you really wanted to. Does that change your whole approach to it? Because if I knew I had 4 albums to go, and if things weren't going, we were fist fights with the Strokes, I heard in 2004 on tour. Does that change the game then? Because if you're not obligated to do it, then maybe you want to.
Right. I mean, maybe it'll put them in a position where instead of having to make music, they've got this bond, they've got this connection with each other that it's not really forced anymore. So maybe whatever they make won't be. Even if they decide to make even if they decide never to make rock music again, or just kind of make a jazz album, or like fucking Nikolai Fertur puts out like a hip hop record or something like that. I mean, they'll just be kind of free to do that.
Absolutely. And obviously they have the talent to do that. And maybe they were under this idea that they needed to create at least a cohesive enough album that RCA would identify and say, hey, this is the Strokes. I don't know the details of all that in their contract, but definitely, I'm curious to see. But I think it's a good step because it feels a lot like for me, 2 or 3 albums since I felt like this was positive vibes within the band from a listener's perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot more celebratory than.
It's a great word. It's a great word.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I mean, yeah, definitely. When I saw that cover, I was like, "What? Come on!" But I'm trying to. I think the cover for Angles was that weird 4-dimensional staircase.
Yeah.
Like that, so.
It's true.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, definitely. Cool. And I think on the other note, speaking of new records, you guys have your record coming out on the 16th, right? On DRD Records?
The 6th, actually. Yep. And that's gonna be we've got a limit. We got 1,000 pressed right now, which is cool. So
that's
if we
awesome.
sell 1,000, we can get another 1,000.
Cool.
But it'll be on all the major internet stuff and whatever. I think we'll just do a $9.99 thing.
Right on.
We kind of wanted to do like a pay what you want, but the label, they kind of want to recoup.
Yeah, understandable.
It makes sense. They threw down on the record, which is really cool. But yeah, dude, super excited about it. It's gonna be dope.
Cool. Yeah, and we've got that Calmer Than You song up on the Apes on Tape Facebook, but I'm sure we'll get more up on the site closer to the date.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm stoked to hear it.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you for joining us. It's a good conversation, man.
Dude, thanks, Nick. Anytime.
Talk to you soon.